I'm Mari Ashby and my guest this week, Amanda Soloway, is the Conservative MP for Derby North and Willie Bach is a Labour peer and the Police and Crime Commissioner for Leicestershire. Welcome to you both. And first, let's get your reaction, if I can, to the news that two police forces, Nottinghamshire and Derbyshire, have passed their files on Conservative election expenses scandal onto the CPS, the Criminal Prosecution Service. Now, Amanda, this comes obviously as the Conservatives have been fined £70,000 by the Electoral Commission for not reporting expenses properly. This is getting serious, isn't it? Are you worried?
The fact is, and obviously I wasn't affected, as you'll know, and the fact is we have complied with the Commission on this, given as much information as we can, supported the investigation, and of course we'll be paying the fine on time. Your party, though, the Electoral Commission said that your party, the Electoral Commission said it had to get a court order, though, to get that information from your party. I have to say I don't know all of the details because I haven't been involved in it. So, as I say, as far as I'm concerned, we have complied in every way on it. OK, well, Willie Bach, many of the problems here centre around the use of a battle bus to visit different seats during the election, and all parties do use tactics like this, don't they? Are you sure that Labour have recorded their expenses correctly too?
Well, one can never be sure about anything, but it does look on this particular occasion that the Conservatives did misuse that battle bus, claiming it was for national expenses when in fact there was definitely a local element. But let's see what the Crown Prosecution Service decide to do. But it's clearly a serious situation for everyone, but particularly for the Tory party at the moment. In your role as PCC, I'm interested to know how hard is it for a police force to deal with something as sensitive and you know, possibly as explosive as this? Well, I'm sure it's very hard. I say I'm sure because, in fact, we haven't got any constituencies in our area where the police have been asked to make inquiries. But it is very sensitive, it's a very difficult field. But I think police forces around this country are now modern enough, know how to deal with situations like this. And we have the Crown Prosecution Service there under our system who will decide whether prosecution should be brought or not. And as you say, we'll wait and see what happens there. Well, next, one East Midlands city is gaining an international reputation as a place of tolerance and freedom. Refugees from around the world are settling in Leicester, many of them after spending years in countries like the Netherlands, Denmark and Sweden. They chose to move on because despite their reputation as liberal countries, they decided that Leicester's multicultural society offered a more tolerant attitude and a chance of a better life. Nisha Chopra has been hearing the story of people from the city's Somali community.
A traditional song and early lessons in a different culture. Children at the Somali Development Centre in Leicester are carrying the hopes of their parents, people who came here to make a new life, but not from Somalia. They arrived here after first settling in countries like the Netherlands, Denmark and Sweden.
Leicester is a welcoming city, and is a city that welcomes, people no matter their background, religion, and race or colour.
Jawahir fled Somalia's civil war and moved to Holland. University educated, she retrained as a social worker, but worried that her children wouldn't be able to move on in Dutch society. She came to Leicester for a holiday after hearing from a friend of the city's cultural tolerance.
I went to, visit, different places, college, schools, universities, and I was amazed. I couldn't believe it, especially one primary school I visited. There was, all different flags and all the different languages, saying, welcome. Like, so I saw, Somali language saying, "Sodawo." That means welcome in Somali language. And I thought, oh my God, they're welcoming people into their own language.
It's that sense of being able to live their own culture, but also to move on in society, education and careers that's brought 15,000 Somalis to Leicester, one of the UK's most multicultural cities.
The Nomad Cafe in St Matthew's Estate lives up to its name. The food is Somali, so are many of the customers here. And many have come via Holland, Sweden and even Denmark. And they've ended up in Leicester because they say the opportunities are better to build a future.
It's very, very open place and multicultural city. You see people from everywhere. You have a lot of opportunity to get work. So I really like it. Yeah.
One friend of mine, he invited me to come to Leicester one day. and I look at the Leicester around, and I meet some people, and I find out there's a great difference where I came from and here in terms of integration, job opportunity, and also the openness of the society.
The cafe's owner has seen another opportunity, the chance to combine the city's multiculturalism with a love of ethnic foods to build a business empire in his adopted country.
I use my culture food mix it for Asian and Italian style, and they're becoming unique for everyone. Even Leicester football players coming here, like Maras, and they're liking the food. I mean, it's something new for them. So I want to nomad born in Leicester, but I want to nomad growing up in the whole world and every angle, like Costa Coffee, like Starbucks.
It's that dream of moving on and up which has led the Somali community to flee their war-torn homeland in search of a place to live where they can preserve their own culture whilst building a future for themselves and for their children.
Well, Willie Bach, it does seem extraordinary, doesn't it, that former refugees who had settled in countries like Holland would then want to move to places like Leicester, you know, from countries supposedly tolerant and famous for that.
Well, those countries are tolerant and nothing against them, but I have to say I'm very proud of our country and very proud of Leicester, because it's a place that people want to come to and to live a good life and to be integrated, but to keep their own culture as well. And I'm lucky enough to know quite a lot of Somalis in Leicester. I work quite closely with the community. And I have to say that your film shows them extremely well. I've been to the development centre myself, seen the great work they do. They're really interested in how the city is functioning and their part in it. And I'm delighted to be able to say that the first Somali police officer is in the next cohort to start being a policeman in Leicester, and 2 female Somalis have passed all the tests necessary. So that's really exciting.
It's a very positive story. But is there a danger, though, that if people do keep their own culture, that they don't always integrate properly?
Of course there's that. Of course that's a danger.
That is an accusation that has been levelled at that community in the past, although they vehemently deny it.
It's been levelled at many, many communities over many, many years, and sometimes there's some truth in it. Everything takes time, sometimes longer, sometimes shorter. My experience, for what it's worth, is that the Somali community in Leicester is integrating well, but it's very determined to keep its own culture. It's wonderful food, by the way. I've actually been to that cafe. It is superb. But I think it's working well. I'm not saying there are no difficulties at all, for young Somalis in particular, but all this is a question of being patient on both sides.
OK, well, Amanda, other cafes are available as well, but more immigration is really hardly going to help the government keep its targets for immigration down. Get those targets down.
What won't keep the targets down? Sorry, I didn't...
More immigration, more people coming in isn't going to help you as a government to reach your targets on immigration.
I mean, I agree with you completely that it's part of our cultural richness that we have all these different communities. And in fact, in Derby, we have a vast array of different communities. And there's one great place called Upbeat Communities, which is about integrating people who are seeking asylum. And in fact, today, on Friday at my surgery, I saw people who are looking to seek asylum. And I think it is great that what we do is we have this multicultural
But are the problems of integration in Derby? I mean, you're talking specifically about an area you know well.
Yes.
Willie obviously knows Leicester very well. Yeah. Is there a problem for integration with more immigration in the city?
I think what it is we need to celebrate different cultures, different communities. And I think that's done really well. And I think it's about enhancing different communities. I think one place where we see it working effectively is in education, but that can be a challenge as well. And I think obviously language can be a barrier to education. And I think we see that in some of our schools where you have a vast array of different languages that need to be taught.
But you've certainly got that in Leicester, haven't you?
Yeah. Yes, we do.
I mean, obviously not everyone's going to welcome more people coming here, Willie. I mean, especially if they're refugees who'd already had safe haven, in another country before they come here.
Yes, I get the point. But in fact, some are refugees from Somalia themselves. It's a really war-torn country for very many years now. But part of freedom should be, if possible, for people to come and live where they want to, provided, of course, they're not causing great trouble for people who are here already. And I think the Somalis who've come actually from Western Europe, from Denmark and Holland have added quite a lot. I mean, not only is their use of language very good, a lot of them speak English too, because they've learnt that in those countries as well, but they also understand what it's like to live in the West.
That language barrier or lack of it is really key, isn't it, to integration and better integration?
Oh, absolutely, and it is. I was saying earlier, it's a challenge for education. But actually, as you say, you know, loads of people. I'm just learning Urdu as an example, and gosh, it's so difficult to learn a different language. But young children who are in this country are learning English incredibly well. And I have to say, you know, when I'm talking Urdu to some of my constituents, they speak English far better than I do Urdu.
It's not an easy language to learn.
Absolutely.
Good luck with that one now. From one community looking to build a new life to another, but are we doing enough to help ex-offenders get into the world of work? One charity which deals with hundreds of former prisoners wants to expand across the East Midlands, but is struggling to raise the money. Here's our political reporter, Tim Parker.
It might look like routine work, but for Anthony March, this job has helped turn his life around.
It's difficult being an ex-offender. You know, there's not many people that want to give you a chance. And I think that is the problem with a lot of ex-offenders, is the fact that they're not given that chance and they don't see no other way out of it, so they just revert back to how they were before. I was lucky enough to get that opportunity, and in a strange way, the way I put it, it saved me.
This bathroom supplies company in Leicester has joined forces with Leicestershire Cares, a charity getting people who come out of prison into work.
It's 8 times harder for an ex-offender to find him employment than somebody who hasn't got a criminal record. And because of this, ex-offenders realise that they've got to really impress upon employers and put in 100%. And they do that, and they appreciate the fact that employers do give them that opportunity. And that's why they're such good workers.
Leicestershire Cares has received £40,000 this year from the Police and Crime Commissioner for Leicester and Leicestershire, and it's benefiting not only individuals who've come out of prison, but companies as well.
From a recruitment point of view, we found some excellent members of staff, and that's difficult. That's never an easy task. From the point of view of the benefits it's brought to the teams that have worked with the placement students, they've undertaken mentoring, they've found new colleagues, and they've learnt new skills as well. So it's a sort of holistic experience for the company and the employees and the placement. We're actually extremely proud of the work that we do on this project.
The Wire project in Leicester is already delivering permanent jobs to people, but can't expand without more long-term funding.
It could be rolled out anywhere in the country. We were actually commissioned to do a pilot 2 years ago in Derbyshire and Nottingham, and that worked very well, and that included doing employee mock interviews in prisons, as well as a small number of placements to see if it works. And clearly it does work, and it would be a very cost-effective means of reducing reoffending.
For Anthony, it's been a life-changing experience.
Been fantastic.
They've really been welcome.
Yeah, fantastic, brilliant. Couldn't wish for better work colleagues, seriously.
And you're going to stay here?
Till I retire, hopefully.
The Leicestershire Police and Crime Commissioner has backed the project for the next 2 years to help more ex-offenders back into work.
So as we hear, Willie Bach, you know, you've put money into that Leicestershire Cares project, but is this really the right use of money? Money that's, after all, is meant to be used for policing?
It's meant to be used. I'm the Police and Crime Commissioner, and it's, I think, absolutely the right use of money. One of the things that my Police and Crime plan that I'm launching this week is going to absolutely concentrate on is prevention. We need to prevent people from committing crime as opposed to having to react to it, which the police have to do too often. And one of the real problems, of course, is for ex-offenders. Instead of being punished and then deciding, well, they won't carry on committing crime, sometimes people who've been inside are the quickest to commit offences again. And this is the system that Leicestershire Care uses, seems to me to be absolutely brilliant, because what it does, it works in the real world with real employers.
Real jobs.
Real jobs. Placements first, 2 weeks placement, and if the placement works, and then a certificate, and then a chance of a real job, either with the firm you've done the placement with or with another firm.
Okay, well, it sounds really positive from what we've seen and from what you're saying now. Amanda, a report last December, though, by the Work and Pension Select Committee said that former prisoners basically just drop off a cliff edge when they leave prison. The committee said that many of them come out with a £46 resettlement, have to wait weeks for their benefits to come through, and don't really get any meaningful help in those early stages. It's a pretty poor picture, isn't it?
Well, I think, as you'll know, on Monday we've got the police and crime bill going through Parliament, and I agree completely. I think that projects like this are absolutely essential, and I've been going into a lot of prisons just recently as part of my role on the Rapporteur for Joint Committee for Human Rights, and the challenges it's around. We have lots of challenges at various stages. One is in education in the first place, but then it's around when you're in prison, it's around education, equipping you for work outside, and then you have the other challenge of preventing crime happening again. And you can, and in a way, prison for some people can even be something that they become institutionalised, and it's about breaking that cycle. But
is your government actually doing enough on that? Because we know that nearly half of adult prisoners are back inside within a year.
I think there's always more to do, and one of the things I would certainly be encouraging is we need to look at it. And I think the problem is that it's this is why projects like this are so good. It's around getting these ex-offenders into some kind of employment, giving them some skills, and I think even apprenticeships could play a role in this, looking at skills and then convincing employers that actually, as we saw on the film, these people actually can become incredibly good contributing employees.
But some people would say, though, Willie Bark, there'll be plenty of people who haven't got jobs who would love this kind of support and help spending on them. And you haven't broken any laws. They haven't offended. They're out of work.
That's true, and we do have to look after them too. And I'm not sure we are doing enough for them. In fact, I'm sure we're not under present arrangements. But I do think that if we want to live in a peaceful society, one where crime isn't on the up, it is time for society to look carefully at what we do with ex-prisoners.
So do you think that the government is tackling this problem? I mean, it does say that it's got a big relaunch from April. It's putting in £100 million, as we know, for more than 2,000 prison officers. And planning, it says, the biggest overhaul in our prison system in a generation.
Well, I think the prison system is in some kind of crisis at the moment. I hope and I think the government accepts that, and work is going on. There's a huge amount that needs to be done. But I think we ought to start again, and this applies to all political parties, to consider whether we don't send too many people to prison in this country. Figures came out this week to suggest that in Western Europe, it's in Britain that most people per population are sent to prison. I think we have to look at rehabilitation again. I hope the government is doing it. My party is certainly doing it.
OK, well, we saw, didn't we, in our film there, Amanda, how Anthony felt about getting that job. It's very positive for him, and we hear that ex-offenders do make hard workers. They're very willing to work. But it's actually 8 times harder for ex-offenders to find work, and it's very hard to convince employers to take them on. So what will your government be doing to address that? Because that's really at the crux of this, isn't there?
It is, and I think there's 2 challenges. One is, whilst within the prison system, is trying to equip people for when they leave work. And one of the things that I heard the other day was around prisoners not knowing where they were going to be living, and I think we need to be addressing issues like that. We need to be managing expectations on leaving prisons. And then I think there's things that we can do. One of the things that possibly we could do is encouraging maybe having a body that supports, a bit like the one that you've got in Leicestershire, where it supports people returning into the workplace, convincing people to take them into employment, and then hopefully finding employment moving on from that.
Giving
as well.
people a second chance. OK, well, time now for